Welcome to the All About English podcast. I'm James.
And I'm Grace. This is the place to grow your English skills, no matter what level.
Be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss an episode. We post daily. You don't want to miss out.
Imagine you're talking to someone new. How close do you usually stand? Have you ever felt someone was just a little, a bit too near?
Mm-hmm. It's a common feeling.
Today on the Deep Dive, we're going to explore something really fascinating and actually pretty important, especially if you're learning to communicate comfortably here in the United States. We're talking about personal space.
That's right. We've been looking into some really insightful research and guides that view personal space from different angles: culture, psychology, relationships.
Yeah, all that. Our goal today is to really get a handle on what personal space means for Americans. Why do we often seem to prefer, a bit more distance?
And maybe most importantly for you listening, especially if you're working on your conversational English skills, how understanding these unspoken rules can genuinely help you feel more confident.
Exactly. Make those interactions smoother. So let's dive in.
Okay, so maybe we should start with the cultural side of things, because personal space definitely isn't the same everywhere you go.
Absolutely not. One piece we looked at shares this really vivid story from a writer, Frank Bures. He was teaching English in Thailand.
Oh, right. I remember that one.
Yeah, and he and his wife lived right next door to the school principal, and the wall between their places didn't even reach the ceiling.
Wow. No privacy there.
He described it as having no buffer zone, that comfortable separation between lives, just completely different from what he was used to.
And that perfectly highlights these cultural variations. There's actually a guide, the International Student Guide to the USA, that calls the U.S. a non-contact culture.
Non-contact culture. Okay, what does that mean exactly?
Well, it even uses a common English idiom, in their face. It suggests Americans might feel someone is in their face if they stand too close when talking.
Ah, okay, so in their face means like too close, maybe aggressive or intrusive.
Exactly. It makes people uncomfortable, and they'll likely, instinctively try to back up a bit, create more distance.
And there's actually a specific term for this study of space and communication, isn't there? Proxemics.
Yes, precisely. Proxemics. It was coined by an anthropologist named Edward Hall. He identified 4 main zones of personal space that are pretty common, generally speaking, in the U.S.
4 zones. Okay, what are they?
So first up is intimate distance. This is really close, like up to about 18 inches.
18 inches? That's less than 2 feet. Very close.
Yeah, it's typically reserved for, intimate contact. Think partners, maybe very close family members comforting a child.
Right. You definitely wouldn't stand that close to your boss or someone you just met.
Almost certainly not. Then the next zone out is personal distance. That ranges from about 18 inches up to maybe 4 feet.
Okay, bit more breathing room there.
Yeah, this is sort of the sweet spot for conversations with good friends, family members you're comfortable with, casual, friendly chats.
Makes sense. Closer than across the room, but you're not, touching.
Exactly. Then we get to social distance, which is bigger, maybe 4 feet out to about 10 feet.
4 to 10 feet. So who would you talk to at that distance?
This is often for acquaintances, people you know, but maybe not super well. Or in more formal situations, like talking to a colleague you don't work with directly every day.
Okay, so chatting with someone from accounting in the hallway. That kind of distance feels about right.
You got it. And the last zone is public distance. That's pretty far out, like 10 feet or more.
10 feet plus. That sounds like public speaking.
Yeah, exactly. Addressing a group or just being in a public space where you're not directly interacting with most people around you.
Huh. It really is like we have these invisible bubbles around us. And as you said, these bubbles are different sizes depending on the culture.
Hugely different sometimes. Hall contrasted the U.S., this non-contact culture, with what he called contact cultures.
Okay, like where?
Places like the Arab world, parts of Southern Europe, much of Africa. In these cultures, people generally stand much closer together.
Right. And they might touch more during conversation?
Yes, more touching, maybe more direct eye contact for longer periods. It's just a different set of norms.
The Bures article also mentioned that even within Europe, say, the comfortable distance for just a casual chat is often closer than in the U.S., maybe around 2 to 3 feet.
Yeah, there are regional differences everywhere. And there's a study that looked at American, Japanese, and Venezuelan students.
Okay.
And it found their personal space preferences could actually shift depending on the language they were speaking.
Whoa, really? The language itself made a difference?
It seemed to. When the Venezuelan students spoke Spanish, they stood on average, about 32 inches apart.
Okay.
But when they switched to English, they actually moved further apart to about 40 inches.
That's quite a jump. What about the Japanese students?
That was interesting, too. Japanese culture typically values more personal space than Venezuelan culture. But in this study, the Japanese students actually moved a tiny bit closer when speaking English compared to Japanese.
Huh. So maybe adopting the language comes with adopting some of its spatial norms, too, even unconsciously.
It certainly suggests a connection, something really useful for you, our listeners learning English, to maybe be aware of. Your own sense of comfortable distance might even shift a bit as you become more fluent.
Fascinating. And did the sources suggest why Americans might prefer more space, generally? Any historical reasons?
They touched on a few possibilities, things like the historical frontier mentality.
Ah, the idea of wide open spaces, independence.
Exactly. Also, influences from Northern European cultural heritage, which tend to be less contact-oriented. And a strong cultural emphasis on individualism might play a role, too.
Right, valuing your own space, your autonomy. Okay, so we see it's cultural, but let's dig into why it matters so much. One source called it a fundamental need, not just a preference.
That's a really key point. Mental health experts weigh in here, suggesting that personal space, and this includes both physical distance and, importantly, emotional boundaries, is crucial for healthy relationships.
So not just about not bumping elbows, it's deeper.
Much deeper. It helps us set clear expectations with each other. It shows respect for the other person's, individuality.
So it's like that buffer zone idea again, but maybe emotionally too. Protecting our sense of self, our safety, our autonomy, which means our ability to feel independent and in control.
Precisely. When we respect those boundaries, physical and emotional, it builds trust. Communication becomes clearer, more comfortable, and it can actually reduce misunderstandings and conflict.
How so?
Well, think about it. If someone's physically way too close, it can feel stressful,
Right.
maybe even a bit threatening or defensive.
Yeah, definitely puts you on edge.
And that's not really conducive to a good conversation. Conducive, by the way, just means helping to make something happen, making it more likely. An uncomfortable closeness isn't conducive to open communication.
Okay. Now, you mentioned personal space isn't just physical distance. The sources break it down.
That's right. It's helpful to think about it in a few different dimensions. First, obviously, is physical space. That's the distance we keep.
Okay, easy enough. Vocabulary here might be words like distance, keep apart, close, far.
Exactly. But then there's emotional space. This is more about protecting our feelings, managing our own emotional energy.
So like not letting someone else's bad mood completely drain you.
Yeah, or feeling like you have to constantly manage their emotions.
Yeah.
It's about having space for your own feelings, protecting them. Vocabulary like feelings, emotions, protect, manage fit here.
Okay, what else?
Increasingly important today.
Yeah.
Digital space. This covers our privacy online, how we interact in messaging apps, social media.
Ah, right, like setting boundaries on when you reply to messages.
Exactly, or how much you share online. So you'll hear terms like privacy, online, digital, messages.
Got it. And then?
Mental space. This is crucial. It's about having that uninterrupted time just to think, to process things.
Without constant notifications or demands on your attention?
Yes. That word uninterrupted is key. No breaks, no intrusions. Just time to focus or let your mind wander.
And the last one?
Social space. This relates to boundaries in social settings, like how much personal information do you share and with whom?
Right, you probably tell your close friends things you wouldn't tell an acquaintance you just met.
Exactly. So words like social, share, information, distinguishing between acquaintances and close friends, that all fits under social space.
Okay, that breakdown is really helpful. So what happens if we don't get enough of these kinds of space? Sounds like trouble.
It can definitely lead to negative outcomes. A chronic lack of personal space, physical or emotional, can make people feel, suffocated.
Trapped almost.
Yeah, and it really increased stress levels. It might even lead to resentment towards the people who are constantly encroaching on that space. Resentment, that's that feeling of bitterness or anger about something you feel is unfair.
I can see that. Like if you live with someone who never gives you any alone time.
Exactly. It's like being on that crowded train constantly, but emotionally too. It blurs the lines between your needs and other people's needs.
Making it hard to just recharge.
Yes. Hard to recharge, hard to maintain your own sense of identity, and over time, this can lead to burnout.
Burnout, like total exhaustion.
Exactly. Emotional, physical, mental exhaustion from prolonged stress. And in relationships, if boundaries aren't respected, trust erodes. Misunderstandings pile up.
It sounds pretty damaging.
It can be. But the flip side is also true. Respecting personal space in relationships brings a lot of benefits.
Okay, like what?
Well, the sources highlight that it encourages self-identity. It helps you keep a strong sense of who you are, even within a close relationship. Self-identity, that's your core understanding of yourself.
So you don't get lost in the relationship.
Right. It also reduces conflict. When you have space to manage your own stress and emotions, you're less likely to lash out or get into arguments.
That makes sense. A little space can prevent blow-ups.
Definitely. And it enhances communication. Because when you feel your space is respected, you generally feel safer, more comfortable being open and honest.
You can talk about your needs without feeling defensive.
Exactly. It also promotes emotional health. Having that independent time lets you reflect, process things on your own terms. Promotes, remember, means helps encourage or increase.
Right. And it builds trust. How does that work?
Because when someone respects your need for space, it shows they have confidence in you and in the relationship itself. They aren't feeling insecure or needing constant reassurance by being, overly close.
Okay, that's a really good point. Let's make this even more practical. How does this play out in different settings, say just regular social interactions?
Well, it's mostly about finding that comfortable distance, that comfort zone where everyone feels at ease. That's a good phrase. At ease just means relaxed and comfortable. When people respect each other's space, they tend to get along better.
Okay. What about the workplace? That seems like it could be tricky.
It can be. In professional settings, respecting space is tied to professionalism and, honestly, productivity. It means respecting quiet zones if someone's trying to focus.
Right, not interrupting someone constantly.
Exactly. That word interrupt, stopping someone mid-task or mid-thought. It also applies to digital boundaries, like not bombarding colleagues with messages after hours and expecting instant replies. You might see a do not disturb sign that's a very clear boundary.
Yeah, respecting those signals is key for professionalism. What about just out in public? On the bus? In line?
There, it's more about those unspoken rules, general etiquette. Etiquette just means the sort of polite code of behavior we generally follow.
Like not standing right on top of someone at the ATM if there's room.
Exactly. Maintaining a reasonable distance. It's just common courtesy.
Okay. And digging a bit deeper, psychologically, why is this space so vital?
Well, it really taps into some core human needs. It promotes autonomy, that feeling of control over yourself and your environment.
Feeling like you're in the driver's seat of your own life.
Yes. And it definitely reduces stress and overwhelm. Having breathing room, physically and mentally, prevents feeling overloaded. Overwhelm is that feeling of having too much to cope with.
Less anxiety.
Right. It also supports mental clarity. You can think more clearly, solve problems more effectively when you're not feeling crowded or pressured.
And it enhances emotional well-being, as we touched on. Time to process emotions privately.
Absolutely. It can even increase self-esteem. Setting and maintaining boundaries reinforces your sense of self-worth. Self-esteem, how you value yourself.
That's interesting. Setting boundaries makes you feel better about yourself.
It often does. And as we've seen, it encourages healthy relationships, balanced ones. And finally, it helps protect against burnout, that utter exhaustion.
This is all making so much sense. So for our listeners wanting to navigate this well, what are some really concrete tips for respecting other people's personal space?
Okay, practical tips. First, and maybe most important, observe body language. Pay attention.
What should you look for?
Is someone subtly stepping back as you talk, crossing their arms, looking away frequently, fidgeting? These can all be signs they feel uncomfortable with the proximity.
So reading those nonverbal cues. Got it. What else?
Ask permission before physical contact. This is huge in the U.S. Don't just assume a hug or a pat on the back is okay.
Even if you mean it to be friendly.
Especially then.
Yeah.
Just ask simply, is a hug okay? Or, mind if I... It shows respect.
Good advice. Next.
Be mindful in conversations. Just be aware of how close you're standing, especially with new people. Give them adequate space.
Yeah.
Being mindful just means being aware, paying attention.
Avoid being in their face.
Exactly. Also, respect privacy in digital spaces. We mentioned this. Don't expect instant replies 244/7. Avoid sending a barrage of messages. A barrage is like a rapid flood of something. Give people time.
Be patient with response times online.
And give people time alone. Recognize that friends, family, partners, everyone needs some personal time sometimes. Don't pressure them for constant togetherness.
Respect their need to recharge. Or what if you need space?
Then it's important to establish clear boundaries. This might mean having open, honest conversations. Saying something like, hey, I really value our time together, but sometimes I just need an hour to myself to decompress.
That sounds hard but necessary.
It can be, but it's healthier in the long run. Also, practice empathy. Try to imagine how you'd feel in their shoes. Empathy, that ability to understand and share someone else's feelings. If you wouldn't like someone standing that close to you, maybe adjust your own distance.
Put yourself in their position. That's a great guideline.
And finally, adapt to social cues.
Yeah.
Remember, it's not just about U.S. culture versus other cultures. Individuals vary too. Pay attention to feedback. Be flexible.
So be observant and adjust as needed. Now, what if someone listening feels like, wow, I need a lot of personal space? Is that weird or abnormal?
Not at all. Needing your own space is completely natural. It's actually essential for mental, emotional, and physical well-being.
Why is it so essential?
It allows you to recharge, like we said, to reflect, think things through without noise, and to connect with yourself, with your own thoughts and feelings.
So needing space isn't necessarily about not liking people.
Absolutely not. It's usually about self-preservation, maintaining your identity, managing your energy, staying balanced. It's about taking care of yourself so you can engage positively with others.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway here?
I think the most crucial point is that understanding and, more importantly, respecting personal space in all its forms is just fundamental. It's vital for your own well-being, for healthy relationships, and for effective communication, especially here in the U.S.
Right. So based on this deep dive, American culture generally leans towards valuing a bit more personal space than many others. We talked about hall zones, the importance of respecting all those different types of boundaries: physical, emotional, digital, mental, social.
And we shared those practical tips: observing body language, asking permission for touch, being mindful of distance and digital interactions.
And for you, our listeners, building your conversational English, really internalizing these nuances can make a huge difference. It helps avoid awkwardness, prevent misunderstandings, and just generally makes interactions feel smoother and more comfortable for everyone involved.
It really does. Paying attention to distance, touch, response times, it's all part of the unspoken language of communication here.
So now we have a question for you listening. Think about your own personal space preferences. How do they line up with what we discussed today about the U.S.? Are they similar? Different? It's interesting just to reflect on that.
Definitely. And if you found this discussion on personal space useful, please consider subscribing to The Deep Dive. We'll be exploring more aspects of communication, American culture, and English language learning.
Yes, please subscribe. And we'd love to hear from you too. Leave us a comment. What other topics about American English or culture are you curious about? What would you like us to tackle in a future deep dive?
Your suggestions really help us make this relevant for you. Ultimately, getting a handle on these invisible boundaries of personal space is a really significant step towards feeling more confident, more comfortable, and more effective when you communicate in English in the United States.
Well said. Thanks for exploring this with us today on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.